Today I'm going to talk about what you should order at Chinese restaurants. So this is another video in my series of what to order on the low-FODMAP diet when you go out to eat, and I've covered different restaurants. You can search this Facebook group for those videos, search things like what to order at Italian restaurants, Mexican restaurants, American restaurants. Those are the three that I've done. I think those are the only three, although now I'm not sure. But yeah, I asked you guys a few weeks ago what types of cuisines you wanted me to cover in these videos, and American food won. So I did one where I went through kind of the Cheesecake Factory menu, which has a lot of typical, modern, contemporary American food on it. But the next most voted was Chinese food. So here we are, and I am gonna go through a very typical Chinese menu. So I will confess, I love all ethnic food, really anything, I'll eat anything, I just love food. But Chinese food is not something I do very often. Like, I love going for dim sum, like all the little dumplings and stuff, which actually I haven't done in years because, that's not the greatest food for my stomach, but I love doing that for Chinese food. But just typical, get the Chinese takeout in a box type thing. It's just not my go-to. It's not my favorite. It'll be like Thai food or like Mediterranean food or something like that before it's Chinese food. So it was kind of fun. I didn't even know. I just kind of searched good Chinese restaurants in Chicago to pull up a menu. So that's what I got. I just wanted something that was very typical, and I think I found one. It's a restaurant called China Dragon in Chicago. So I went through their menu to base, this video on. All right, so if you are watching the replay, you can ask questions in the comments in Facebook, in the Facebook group, and if you're watching live, thank you for joining me live. Okay, so I've got notes, and so that's when I'm looking down at my computer now, so I'm not just shy or ignoring you. But let's start with appetizers, okay? So you would think Chinese food would be almost impossible, but it's not. And there are things where, I'll tell you the options that are the most, clear cut. This is, your surefire bet if you really need to be ultra low FODMAP. And then there are the things where, well, this might be okay, and here's how you can modify it. So with appetizers, things like barbecue pork, or on this menu they had barbecue rib tip, teriyaki beef, teriyaki chicken, so you're just getting the protein. And those things have sauces for sure. And here's kind of the overall approach for all the sauces with Chinese food. And I'll go through some of the individual ones, but depending on the restaurant, they may be made with high fructose corn syrup, and that's high in fructose, so that's high FODMAP. And it's not ideal, and you don't know. If you ask the server, does this have high fructose corn syrup, you are not going to get an answer. And so if you're at, a more high-end Chinese restaurant or high quality, and sometimes it's hard to tell, maybe they use better ingredients, but you don't know that for a fact. Maybe they don't. So that's the thing that's, a lot of these sauces may contain high fructose corn syrup. Honey is less likely because honey's expensive, so that's not something you'll find all that often in fast food and takeout food, stuff like that. Although if you look up a lot of these recipes, they might be made with honey if you're going to make them at home. But in restaurants, that's not a typical ingredient. So the other ingredient that would be the base of a lot of these sauces is ketchup. So, and we know that often, just basic American ketchup has high fructose corn syrup sometimes, not all the time, but that's another reason why these sauces are maybe high in fructose. However, just a little bit, as long as you're not eating a meal that's drenched in like orange sauce or whatever the sauce, the barbecue sauce, a little bit should be okay. So even if it's not high fructose corn syrup, you don't want to be eating this huge, massive, sugary sauce. So if you have like barbecue pork with a little bit of the Chinese barbecue sauce on it, which is very likely to have garlic. A lot of the sauces do have garlic. It's not mandatory in all these sauces. More often you'll find ginger in there, but sometimes they do contain garlic. But so when you're having stuff with sauce, make sure it's a small amount and you're not just eating, it's not like globbed on. So to do that, you're going to want to order the sauce on the side. So I don't think you have to avoid something like orange chicken, but get the sauce on the side and just kind of dab a little on your dish and mix it up, or use it as a dipping sauce. And, you know, depending on your tolerance, and if you know a little more about your tolerance, that should be fine. Okay, so those are the appetizers that are good. Appetizers to avoid, you want to avoid the egg rolls and spring rolls. So anything, any dumplings at a Chinese restaurant, those are all made with wheat flour. If it's a spring roll, that is made with rice noodle, but Chinese spring rolls are always fried. So if they're not fried, that's great, but they usually are. Dumplings are made with wheat flour. Noodles, unless they say rice noodles, they're gonna be wheat noodles. So you want to avoid the noodles when you do Chinese food. Unless you've tested your tolerance and you can have some noodles, you know, that's up to you. So sometimes some of the soups might be okay, you know, they might have a little garlic. Garlic is not like the big feature ingredient in Chinese food. So if that's something you really want to avoid, it's not, you know, it's not like in Italian food where there's a lot of it and it's in everything. Garlic is usually the little side note. So even if it's in there, there's not a massive amount in there. So like seaweed soup, chicken and rice soup, egg drop soup does not traditionally have garlic in it. It has ginger and chives. So those are some possible options. And I mean, you can always ask, but depending on where you are, you may not be able to get a really great answer of all the ingredients in the soup or whatever else it is. Okay, so what else? Let's move on to some entrees. So let's talk kind of going through all the sauces, because that's kind of how Chinese food really is, right? It's all the proteins, different veggies, and it's either kind of rice or noodles in most cases. So sweet and sour shrimp, chicken, whatever, doesn't traditionally have garlic, although it might, you know, it can depend on the restaurant, depend on the cook. You can always try asking, there's no harm in asking. But sweet and sour seems like a good choice. Probably has ketchup, you know, so the sauce, again, if you're not feeling confident that they make a really high quality sauce, get it on the side, have a little bit. So that's a good one. Orange chicken probably has garlic, but again, get it on the side. Orange chicken is typically made with the fried chicken. So if they can make it with just the plain stir-fried chicken, that's what you want. Don't get those, you know, the crunchy, if it says crunchy or crispy on the menu, you want to avoid that. That's just gonna be fried. Not the best. And that's not a FODMAP, but it can be hard on your stomach, especially when you're eating out and you tend to eat a larger amount of food. You know, one bite may be okay, but that fried, you know, stir-fried chicken is not great. Okay, what else? We've got, how about Kung Pao chicken? So that's made with chili paste. That's one of the spicier sauces. And the chili paste usually has a little garlic in it. But again, that's one of those times where it's just a background thing. It's not a feature ingredient in Chinese food, so that's not a bad choice. It's also made with soy sauce, Chinese cooking wine. So Kung Pao is a pretty good one. General Tso, if you're wondering what's in there, that typically contains a little bit of garlic. Not a ton, again, but probably, you know, depending on the restaurant, there's a good chance it's high fructose corn syrup or even just a little corn syrup high fructose corn syrup from the ketchup. Brown sauce typically includes garlic. So the reason, and the way that you know what to order, right? So I want to like really help you in any, you know, wherever you are. Something you can do is look up the recipes for a lot of these things. Like you can say like Chinese takeout General Tso's chicken, and you'll see, and you know, you'll get a lot of results, and some are going to be better than others, but pick one that's like a takeout copycat type of recipe and see how it's made. You know, if they're using like really high quality ingredients, that's not a good model, but you know, a lot of times you can find an authentic recipe and you can be like, okay, so these are the typical ingredients. And, you know, that's where I kind of like use my cooking backgrounds and, you know, to help me do these videos and try to figure this stuff out for you. So that is something you can do. And, you know, you'll get the hang of it the more you do it. You kind of can look up recipes, especially when you're going to a Chinese restaurant where these are like the standard traditional things. So that's how you can kind of figure it out. It's about how the dish is cooked, for one, and then if it's something classic like General Tso's chicken, you know, the typical ingredients, it's pretty easy to figure out. What else? So Szechuan sauce, that typically includes garlic. The brown sauce is my favorite. Like, don't you love the brown sauce? It's not my favorite to eat, but I just love that you could just be like, it's brown sauce and doesn't have to have a fancy name. Okay, so you can do those sauces. Like I said, garlic is not generally the feature ingredient. You can do them on the side. It's always a really good idea. But if you are trying to really, you're like, I don't want any FODMAPs, I want to keep it super, super low, then what you do is the simple stir-fried chicken. Some restaurants will have steamed chicken or shrimp, so you can get it really healthy, and that's for people who, you know, I think they're trying to cater to a more health-conscious consumer sometimes, and they'll do that, which is really handy. Or even just plain stir-fried. You can do, a lot of restaurants will have just a chicken and broccoli, or shrimp and broccoli, beef and broccoli. Get the sauce on the side, or, you know, don't get it at all, and then just plain white rice. So you can definitely get by, and it's nice to do like the stir-fried chicken or beef at a Chinese restaurant. So the reason why it's so moist and delicious is because they do this thing called, oh, what is it called? Is it silking? I can't think of the name. There's a word for it, but what they do is they kind of marinate the chicken breast in cornstarch before they stir-fry it. What is it called? I can't think of it right now. But that is how they get it to be super tender and moist, and you're just like, why doesn't it turn out like this at home when I stir-fry chicken? But that's why. So, you know, you can kind of enjoy that, you know, aspect of, it's like a treat. It's, you know, it's this really nice sautéed chicken or shrimp or beef or whatever, and you don't have to get all the sauce and all the veggies. But, you know, you can often get steamed veggies at Chinese restaurants. Some even have brown rice. You know, it's just like, check it out and check out your options if you can choose between different restaurants. Beef with tomato and bell pepper, you know, if you see something like that, they may include onions in there and they just don't list it. So that's an easy question. Does this have onions? You know, like if they can't tell you that, then yeah, it's probably, and you know, maybe there's a barrier, you know, that's okay. Just make the best choices you can. It depends on how much you want to really eliminate FODMAPs depending where you are at that time. Black bean sauce, obviously that's made with beans. You don't want to do that, and that does typically include garlic. What else have we got? I'm getting to the end, guys. And if you have a question, feel free to put it in there if you want to talk about Chinese food, or if you have any specific dishes you're curious about. So other things like a dish you might see is salt and pepper shrimp or salt and pepper fish or pork chop. So that is typically, it could be fried, the protein could be fried, but it's also typically includes vegetables like onion and celery. So you want to ask, like, what does that dish actually look like? Because it sounds super simple, but it isn't necessarily that simple. All right, so I kind of got through the general menu stuff, but just some overall tips for ordering at Chinese restaurants. I covered that a lot of the sauces may have high fructose corn syrup. It totally depends. It doesn't, you know, low-end versus high-end restaurants, that doesn't necessarily tell the whole story, but that's just something to be aware of, which is why, you know, you want to keep those sauces minimal or have them on the side. If you're ordering a stir-fry type dish, you know, it could be something, you know, maybe they have all the vegetables together. They've got onion and peppers and broccoli, it's all already mixed up. But if you order it without onions, if they can do that for you, I mean, it's okay if the onions touched the bell peppers before they were cooked. I mean, you would have to be so sensitive to the FODMAPs in onions for that to be an issue. So if they can take those onions out before they cook it, fantastic. So that's nice if it's a dish that's cooked like at the minute, which with Chinese food sometimes it is. Let's see, you want to avoid proteins that are deep fried or crispy or crunchy, so like that orange chicken is often deep fried, but oftentimes they can do it without deep frying it because a lot of people want that. So yeah, go with the sautéed or the stir-fried or the steamed if that's an option, and sometimes it is. You can even just ask. Chinese restaurants have always gotten a bad rap for being unhealthy, so I think they've become aware that people want steamed chicken, so like they do understand, you know, something like that. Avoid noodles. They're almost always wheat unless it says it's a rice noodle. And yeah, those are my overall tips for Chinese restaurants. So yeah, it's very doable. You can keep it super low FODMAP, or you can kind of, you know, be a little bit more daring and have some of those sauces. And yeah, it's totally doable. It's not oh, the other one is fried rice. Doesn't necessarily contain garlic, okay? So that's another thing that's usually made, well, it might be made ahead. But that's something you could probably ask about. Like, and it might be at this Chinese restaurant, they might be like, oh God, no, there's no garlic in there. That's just not what we do, you know? It's one of those things where like every person you ask has a way that it should be done. So it may not, you know, the fried rice may not have garlic, and if that's the case, go crazy with the fried rice. You know, it would have egg and, you know, some of those little veggies. Oftentimes it has peas. It may not have enough peas to really be a problem, and, you know, with peas in a stir fry, like the FODMAPs aren't gonna leach out, so if you don't wanna eat them, you can pick them out. So that's another option too, all right? So does anyone have any questions? Didn't get a lot of people on. You guys must be like out and having fun, and just, it's a really nice day here. It's like really like Indian summer warm weather. So I hope you're out having fun. But if you do have a question, leave it in the comments, and let me know what you think. Let me know if you want more of these videos or another type of cuisine, and I'll talk to you next week, all right? Bye, guys.